on this. Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness that would cause these sorts of lapses? And it's a yes or no question. And if you don't know, why don't you, as one of his senior staff members, know?
I have an answer for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question.
I'm going to ask.
It's a no, Hannah. It's a no, Hannah. Did you hear, KJP? It's not even a question. It's not that she doesn't know. It's just a flat-out no. No explanation needed. The president
it was essentially a hell no.
The president is totally fine. So that was asked yesterday, and I think it's a fair question. But KJP has been lying to us all along. So has Joe Biden, and I think we're seeing how much his inner circle has hidden his issues. And now I believe they're having some sort of governor's meeting, and Newsom is actually headed to the White House today, not to officially take over, of course, just for like this meeting of governors to support Biden. I think
get him measured for a desk chair.
If I was Biden and Newsom was showing up, I'd be nervous. Although you'd have to kind of be with it to even be nervous. Well, John, I think Hannah and I both were recounting our stories of trying to get in this morning.
It was harrowing.
The rain has stopped here in Columbia, Missouri. It was pouring as I left Ashland. How's it looking down in Jefferson City?
Yeah, it's kind of let up now for here. When I got here early enough this morning, kind of missed it. But boy, when it rolled in. Folks down the hall were waiting in the parking lot for the rain to let up just so they could make a sprint for the building.
Oh, it was hard to see coming in, and there was a lot of water on the roadway. So we're going to talk a little bit later, John, because we've got an update on the Highway 54 project.
And there's also a flash flood warning up for some of our Callaways and counties, rather, including Callaway and Audrain and a few others.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think you'll be hearing from us in the coming weeks to give yourself some extra time due to the construction. But this morning especially, give yourself some extra time because there's a lot of water out there. We don't have, I don't think, any official totals. Y'all have good rain gauges, though, if you want to tell us where you're at and what you're showing. I think the weather service, Brian was telling me, has been very busy, so he hasn't seen an official total yet. But I know last night, like, it's that kind of sleep where you just hear the sheets of rain, and I'm like, I finally got a good night's sleep. I just love sleeping in the rain. So
I couldn't hear anything over my window AC unit, and so when I just walked out the front door this morning, I was like, oh, man.
You were surprised. Well,
I was.
And I think everyone is also watching the weather for, obviously, the 4th of July events tomorrow. I know Ashland's got a morning parade. Hannah, California has a morning parade.
Oh, yeah.
Jefferson City has an afternoon parade. There are tons of events all around mid-Missouri, and, of course, the fireworks. So I'm sure we'll be keeping you up to date should we get more updates. But I think, John, the forecast, not great for the 4th.
It looks pretty stormy right through today, and again tomorrow, several rounds of thunderstorms. So could be a soggy 4th of July.
Now, I know that there are a lot of people, though, that are going to be celebrating whether or not, and I think the 5th is looking better. And for a lot of state folks, John, the governor earlier this, I think just a couple weeks ago, said, yep, you get the day off.
It was actually just a couple days ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I have several state employees in my family, and the family group text was popping.
I know, and so the state's off, but like not every local government is off. I know we were talking about at our alderman meeting last night, but I saw this tweet yesterday, and I know everyone on the show enjoys a good dad joke, but when you couple a dad joke with a constitutional law joke, I think it hit all the highlights for me. So from Peter Suderman of Reason, he said, technically, the Friday after the 4th isn't a holiday, but I think we all know that Americans have a constitutional right to take the 5th. And so that one got me.
And then drink it.
There you go. So congrats to all the state workers who get a long holiday. I hope you get out in our mid-Missouri area and enjoy our communities and the events that have been planned by our local volunteers and visit our local businesses. It's going to be a very good weekend. We've talked before, 4th of July is one of my favorite holidays. John, do you have a favorite holiday?
Yeah, 4th of July ranks right up there, pretty much dedicated to nothing other than fireworks and eating too much barbecue.
There we go. I like it. Well,
I got engaged on not necessarily the 4th of July, but at my in-laws' side, family 4th of July party.
I also got engaged on 4th of July, watching
Okay,
some fireworks.
twinsies.
So
How about that?
I do love 4th of July. Well, we today, so we're having a little bit more fun. You're going to hear some best ofs on Friday from us. And Randy will be back on Monday. So today kind of feels like a Friday, but we're going to give you some hard news too. We've got Sophia Shore joining us at 6:35. Not only is she Bill Eigel's campaign manager, but she was elected, I think, chairwoman of the state convention. I think the day that Marc described yesterday as a complete disaster. But
We're still workshopping the creative name that we want to give it. I know in the podcast episode from yesterday, I think I called it Debate Gate or Debate Debacle.
Delegate
or
Gate.
Delegate Debacle. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Delegate.
Oh, see, yeah.
We
I was
gotta-
overthinking it.
We got to work on that. Well, I think, the overwhelming consensus, I think, was that Sophia handled herself really well and led a good state convention, but certainly there were some issues that day. And I don't think, I think everyone's kind of finger pointing right now, but I think from my perspective, I think it's important to hear from her. She had some quotes yesterday in an article about this recent decision about throwing that delegate slate out.
Using words like asinine, and
Yeah.
it was pretty fiery. So
Nefarious, I
yeah.
think. So I want to get her take from being there that day on what exactly happened and what she thinks should happen next. So we will be talking to her again at 6:35. We will then, my sister's coming in at 7:35. I want to get your take on if you got any questions about charter schools. So Sarah used to teach in Jefferson City, so she's taught in a traditional public school. She then taught in a public charter school for a number of years. She's come on the show before, but at the time she was still teaching at the charter school, so she couldn't always speak her mind. Now she doesn't have that job anymore.
all bets are off.
So
Right.
she can be a little bit more open about what it's like. And I think, less on the public policy side, but more on what's it look like to teach in there every day? What's it look like to send a student? How do you select the students? How does the flexibility affect the daily teaching? So if you have questions, go ahead and text those into us at 573-874-9390, because, of course, the legislature passed a bill that would allow charter expansion in Boone County, in mid-Missouri, for the first time. Before that, charter schools were statutorily limited just to Kansas City and St. Louis. So I've been talking amongst friends and parents, and they do have a lot of questions, seeing as it could directly affect us here in the near future. We've got Zack Smith, who joins us a lot of Wednesdays from Heritage. He will be here. Of course, we've had a monumental week at SCOTUS. Zack will be helping us break all of that down. We'll get a little bit nerdy, Hannah, but of course,
Little bit.
well, we heard yesterday though that actually the other trial. So we knew the one trial, the D.C. trial, was going to be affected by presidential immunity, but now the sentencing in the New York trial has been kicked, and they say that's on the basis of this presidential immunity decision, specifically the evidentiary piece of that case. So we did not get to that. That happened after the show yesterday. So I'm going to be hoping that Zack can really break that down for us, and we can kind of talk about Trump's future in the legal realm.
It's pretty interesting, isn't it?
It really is. And then we're going to bring in, my dad's going to be joining us for a minute. He's a veteran and loves to celebrate the 4th of July. And since we're having a little bit of fun, we'll introduce you to introduce the Wake Up fam to some of my fam today. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
excited for that.
That's
All right.
great.
Brian, any updates here quickly on the weather? We talked a little bit about it, just telling people to take some more time. There's a lot of water out there.
Well, and I think you hit it on the head, Stephanie, what you said this morning when you first walked in. You mentioned you could not see it at times, and that's exactly right. And there are certain areas where you go out and there's nothing happening, and then there's certain spots that are happening with the storms that you literally cannot see. It has come down that hard. So two really big quick observations. Number one, National Weather Service thought this was going to primarily be in North Missouri. That was not the case. It went further south. Actually, it went much further south than Columbia as well. But we've got 6 flash flood warnings in effect right now, and we're likely going to get more. Boone, Audrain, Callaway, Cooper, Howard, in Montgomery. Weather Service in St. Louis is swamped, so I can't call them right now. I won't be able to call them until this calms down a little bit. I'm going to rely on listeners to give me some rain totals.
And are you ready? You got your pen and paper here? Because I asked
Yes.
them, and I've got Kenny saying almost 5 inches near Hallsville. Colleen,
Wow.
6.75 inches in her rain gauge in Booneville. Jeff from Harrisburg says 6+ inches. My rain gauge is completely full. I've got another texter who, we need your name, Guthrie, has 3 inches so far.
Who was the person in Boonville again?
Boonville is Colleen. Saying she's got 6.75 inches in her rain gauge. And I mean, it just poured.
Well, exactly. And again, Hallsville.
Hallsville is Kenny. Kenny says 5 inches in Hallsville. Jeff, Harrisburg, 6 inches.
This is much more than what we were expecting. And again, we're not meteorologists. I quote the National Weather Service. We thought they said we expect some rain, but really there wasn't going to be anything severe. This is very, very problematic.
Yeah, they kept saying the Highway 24 corridor for 2 or 3 days, didn't they?
They did, and I talked to them multiple times. And again, we actually had some tornado warnings in far north Missouri, but certainly that's a lot of rain. Those numbers are. They're just not meant to have almost 7 inches of rain in Boonville. That's just...
Guys, we got an update on a power outage. Three Rivers Electric, a bunch of folks down around that neck of the woods. A tractor trailer hit a utility pole yesterday on Highway 133. About 500 customers in Blaine Lutkemeier's neck of the woods. St. Elizabeth and Meta had no power, but they're, if not all, the vast majority of them back on this morning.
That's a good update. Thank you, John.
Good.
And thanks for the callers, because we do rely on callers for a lot of the weather, and these numbers are incredible, much higher than what we were expecting.
Yeah, and keep your eyes on the news the next couple days, because I know the weather forecast for tomorrow is not great. And so we've got a lot of events planned, a lot of parades, a lot of fireworks, and I know everyone's kind of holding their breath trying to see how this shakes out, seeing as yesterday's weather was a little bit unexpected.
Well, exactly. And to say the least, I'm not going to scare people, but I'm just looking at this forecast. Although they're saying there's going to be storms, maybe there won't be storms now, but they're saying there's going to be storms. But if this forecast holds up, I don't see them having fireworks tomorrow night. We'll find out. Hopefully it'll dry up, and hopefully there won't be any severe weather. But we're definitely going to get a lot of rain tomorrow again, and the ground is very saturated.
Well, and I know just a lot of folks like John, they want to light things on fire, eat some barbecue. I know I got some people that want to play some golf. Friday is actually looking really nice. Friday. Of course, a lot of, like we just mentioned, the state workers are off. A lot of people have that day off, so you might be bumping your plans by a day. But hopefully
that she would include. AOC says the Supreme Court has become, quote, consumed by a corruption crisis beyond its control. If the articles of impeachment are privileged, the House would be forced to consider them within 2 legislative days.
Impeach everybody, John. Like back a long time
Throw
ago.
the bums out.
Impeachment was something that happened rare, and now it's like if you order the wrong flavor of ice cream, impeachment. I mean, we're constantly talking about, and not just from the left, from the right too. This person needs to be impeached. I think we need it. It's almost like the boy who cried wolf, because once we have something that's really important and warrants impeachment, I think people are going to be like, oh, this again.
Yeah, they haven't been too darn effective, have they?
They really haven't. Well, impeachment gets us into our daily D.C. rundown. AOC, of course, a member of the waning squad, and a lot of people in Missouri are hoping to whittle those numbers down by the loss of Cori Bush. Of course, she's the latest shows that she is in a dead heat with Wesley Bell. We've got our own congressional race here in mid-Missouri at the 3rd congressional race. The candidates have been out in force. Both were at our debate watch party last week, John. And I did see the News Tribune is hosting a forum for the congressional candidates on July 9th there at City Hall in Jefferson City. So if you haven't had an opportunity to see those candidates or hear what they're about, you've got one there. We've also, we'll be playing some congressional audio about a member of Congress who had an awesome interaction with Trump and the Taliban later. Maybe you saw it online yesterday. It was going kind of viral, but we're going to wait a bit for that. We also saw a big win out on Title IX yesterday. Now, we've been talking to our friends, John, at the Independent Women's Forum about these new Biden Title IX provisions. They put out this rule. It has wide-ranging effects, potentially with girls in men's sports. It also with the use of pronouns, or like mandating the use of pronouns on college campuses. There's also some due process concerns that would affect young men at universities. And apparently they went to court, and a federal judge has issued a nationwide injunction against the rewrite of Title IX. So I think a big win there, and I'm sure we will be catching up with IWF on that. And we can ask our friend Zack Smith from Heritage, who joins us at 8:10 today, about that too. But I think that's a big deal, John.
That's a big deal, and I think people have lost sight in recent years of what Title IX was all about back in the 70s when it went in place. It was about equal access, but literally leveling the playing field.
And yeah, I think people have totally lost sight. And of course, we got the Chevron decision earlier this week about overreach of administrative agencies, but these rule rewrites can really change the landscape of something and totally reform it from something that it was originally designed to do. We also heard yesterday there will be a sentencing delay. If you recall, we were supposed to get Trump's sentence on July 11th, right before the RNC convention. We heard yesterday that his lawyers are now saying, hey, we need more time to evaluate the immunity decision and how it affects this case before the sentencing. And Judge Merchan actually said, yeah, I will delay this sentencing hearing. I don't think we know exactly when it is going to occur, but that's a big deal.
We heard rumblings about even September now.
Right. And I think for a long time, it was just a lot of the defense for Trump was just, let's get this thing delayed. None of this should happen before the election. And so it's just a big win, I think, because the whole time it's let's let the voters decide. Let's let the voters decide if they want Trump. Let's kick these cases. And of course, the whole time the Democrats have been saying, how fast can we push these things through? And up until this point, they've been but for that one case, they've been unsuccessful. And now with the sentencing, it looks like that might not happen before the election either. So big wins yesterday, I think, for Trump and for the American people. are joined by Sophia Shore. Not only is she Bill Eigel's campaign manager, but at the state convention, she was elected the chairwoman. There's a lot that has been going in the last week, a lot of developments about what some people are calling Delegate Gate. And
by some people, we mean...
No,
well,
there's a lot of people.
Is it more than just us?
I think so. Well, and so really this all centers around, the state convention happened. There was a slate elected. And so this is all about who gets to go to the RNC convention, which is now very quickly approaching. Now, I don't think all of the things I saw after the convention the day was messy. But overall, given all of the circumstances and the egos and the personalities, that Sophia kept everyone in line and kept the trains running and did a great job as chairwoman. But for those people, I mean, we've had a lot of people speculate, but not everyone was in the room. So, Sophia, can we back up a little bit and tell us, what that day, from your perspective, what it was like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, ladies, so much for having me on today. So, from my perspective, the whole schedule was laid out, and from 7 to 9 a.m. was supposed to be credentialing. And the one thing that has to happen before the permanent chair is elected is credentialing, because any civilian that might run for chair just off the street, they don't have access to all the county data. Does that make sense? They don't have access to the county caucus information, who was submitted for the state caucus, who was submitted for the congressional caucuses. So that's the one job of the temp chair, which is Nick Myers.
Okay, and so for people who, credentialing is a really big way of just saying you're there, you're supposed to be there, right? So that you were properly elected. So for my friends in Boone County who went to the Boone County caucus, that at the Boone County caucus, you were elected, and so you are entitled to be there and to vote. Is that what credentialing means?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the different county chairs, or the chairs of the county caucuses, whoever was elected chair of the county caucuses, they were responsible for submitting to the state GOP the delegates for the state convention and for the congressional convention. And so the state party had all of this information, and the county caucus chairs were able to submit their delegate information in the order that people should be seated. And so what that means is you have delegates and alternates. You have an equal amount of delegates and alternates. So if somebody can't show up, you're supposed to have delegates in the crowd that can fill the space, so that nobody is disenfranchised, because these delegates represent their county, right, and their region and the caucus system. And so the night before, I caught wind through a friend of a friend that the party had completely botched the delegate list, and they were up all night trying to fix it. Well, so you knew going in the next day that it was going to be kind of interesting. So I get there probably around 7:45, 8 a.m., and the line, there was a problem line, okay, and it's long. It's very long. But we're supposed to start promptly at 9 a.m. because the schedule has us adjourning at 2 o'clock. We have a lot of business to get through. Well, 9 o'clock rolls around, we're not starting. 10 o'clock rolls around, we're not starting. People are starting to get mad by 11 o'clock. You can imagine. 11 o'clock rolls around, we're not starting. Finally, noon, there seems to be a little bit of movement, but we don't even get seated until 1 o'clock. And so how it works, too, is that the temp chair, the GOP chair, gets to appoint ahead of credentialing, ahead of the nominating committee, the rules committee, and the platform committee. So I didn't replace anyone that was his chair, because they had access to the information that I didn't have going into convention, and I wanted the convention to run smoothly. I don't get elected to the chair. I get elected by a vote of 436 to 336, so by 100 votes. I don't get elected to the chair until 2 o'clock. That was when we were supposed to be adjourning for the day. So I get elected at 2 o'clock. Everybody's starving. Okay, they haven't eaten lunch. They've been there since 7 in the morning, a lot of them. We break for 30 minutes for lunch. Everybody's still in line. The lunch line was very inefficient. I had to wait till 2:45. During that time, and part of this whole delegate gate, as you guys call it, I haven't been calling it that, but I need to start. Thank you for that. Somebody approaches me on the platform and says, hey, people are being denied entry into the area and are being told that it's at your direction. And I was like, I gave no such direction. Please go remedy the situation immediately. I went up to the podium and said, hey, that is not allowed. Like, people are allowed to come back in. I've given no such direction. Any of that behavior should cease immediately. So at 2:45, we come back in. You have I'm trying to think, I should have had my schedule right in front of me. But we went into, there are several different elections. There's the National Committee man and woman. There's the delegate election, the election of delegates, the electors, the ratification of the electors. And so we had a delegate, a lot of different people. Well, there was rules next. I apologize. So you have to then approve the rules package. And so the problem with the rules were the standing rules and the call to convention were completely contradicting. And what I mean by that is the standing rules lay out that for it to be a full and complete slate by the RNC, it has to be a list of 27 delegates and alternates. The standing rules and the call to convention say this. And it's very clear that these people are selected by election. They have to be elected because that's the point of convention. That's the point of everybody coming together and choosing who's going to represent you. It's a majority game. And so I find it really hilarious that some people have said, oh, this was a well-organized hijacking of convention. Like, you can't hijack convention. That's impossible. You have to have a majority of people. So the rules package, though, somebody came forward and made a motion to strike. There was a portion of the call to convention that contradicted the rest of the rules package that said that the chair could hand select 16 of the 27 delegates. But that contradicted the entire rules package because that would make you have a slate of 16 and 11, and the rules are very clear. It's a slate of 27 or you're disqualified. So a motion was brought forward to strike the portion with allowing the temp chair, which is the GOP chair, to hand select 16 delegates. And the second part of the rules package that was struck was the requirement for these lists to be turned into the nominating committee by 8 a.m. on Saturday. And the goal of that was to make sure that there was no confusion on who could submit slates. So even if somebody had an invalid slate, like, we were going to give them ample time to submit anything else they wanted. And this, too, I think this is what the body ultimately decided to pass. Like, it's really important to know, as the chair, I don't have unilateral authority to do anything. So the body decided to pass this rule change, this rule amendment. It was something that I had hired personally. I got some flack for this, but I couldn't find a Missouri attorney as my parliamentarian. But I hired a parliamentarian who actually is one of the parliamentarians for the RNC to go through the rules package. He was like, this is highly irregular. Your state party completely botched this. And they did. And there are other documentation later that we just received showing how they botched their 16F application. So for those at home, that's what you have to submit to the RNC, the National Committee, on how you select delegates. So anyway, the body ends up approving these. So we go into Chris Howard, who was the nominating committee chair, was Nick's nominating committee chair. I kept, and he, then declared, okay, by these rules, only one slate is valid. And Nick had a slate of 16 and 11 that could easily be combined. And there was also another slate. And so I said, hey, we'll give you 30 minutes. Whoever.
For a couple of the GOP delegates for this. What's
Yes,
the relief for this ahead of the convention? You've got a deadline looming large, right?
Yeah. So, but the bottom line is this. So there was a delegate list, the delegates that were approved by the convention, because Nick Myers withdrew his slate. Like, he would not put forward a slate because he knew he didn't have the majority. And so we actually waited an hour for anyone else to submit a slate. This was the only slate that ended up being submitted. And like I said, Nick didn't submit his slate. And now what's happened is the state GOP has, they gave away our minutes and all of the internal documents to these people who were giving who made these challenges to the contest committee. And Carrie Allman, who was defeated by a very large margin, is on the contest committee at the RNC. And so on the basis of the credentialing that I talked about at the beginning that took 5 hours, on the basis of the credentialing, which is the responsibility, it's the only responsibility of the Missouri GOP as the temp chairs of the convention. They are now giving power back to the Missouri State GOP in deciding who those delegates are. And so that is the long and short of it all. There has been a lot said, but from my perspective, I think it's asinine that you would give the people responsible for making the error the authority to choose the delegate list when they were clearly in the minority at convention. I think it disenfranchises people. I think a lot of people feel gypped. I think it's wrong. I'm not personally going to convention. Obviously, I was never going to. People are like, why did you do this and not even get the fun part? I'm like, I don't have time to go to convention this year. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm not sure actually what's going to happen. Nick Myers, I think, has a deadline of Friday. I think the state GOP, their deadline is Friday maybe to submit whatever slate they choose. I obviously believe that they should submit the truly grassroots for Trump slates and be done with it. I think that's the honorable thing to do, looking at everything they put everyone through on that day. Obviously, some people have some different opinions, but yeah, that's my account of convention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, my understanding is that there's still a response period, that what we saw posted online from the RNC was just a recommendation, and that the truly grassroots Trump slate people have a chance to respond. And then also, I mean, I guess what's being communicated to those delegates on that slate?
From my end, forgive me if I'm lacking any information. I've been trying to obviously run the statewide campaign and communicate with them as well, but I don't think much communication has been happening, frankly. I think they've tried to contact, the state GOP. I think the chairman's contacted a few of the people on the slate, a few specific ones he could silo out. But there will be a response, I'm sure. Kobe Collins is leading that effort. He's actually an Ashcroft supporter. So this, it's not, people want to make this just about Eigel. But Kobe and Maisie Boyd, who's a good friend of mine, have really been. She was elected the delegation chair. And we don't know what's going to happen because we don't know what slate Nick's going to appoint and who will have the majority of delegation. So originally, Kobe Collins was on our the credentials committee at the RNC, but since they've stripped us of our delegation, we'll make an appeal, but we don't have a way to plead our case in front of the RNC credentialing committee.
And certainly,
so a lot's up in the air right now.
Yeah, and certainly that convention is coming up really quickly. So
a lot of people have paid money already. A lot of people who have never been to RNC, who are new to the political
Birth control pills, Walmart, pineapple on pizza, legal interracial marriage, calling 911, high fives, the last French guillotine execution, CNN, ciabatta bread, and over 95% of the U.S. population.
That's a list of things younger than Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Yeah, yikes.
That's insane. We're going to have to hold on to that one. That's pretty good. High fives? When were high fives invented?
I think he said 77.
Oh, wow. Well, and they also said the interstate highway system, which we have a big update, and we're trying to have a feel-good Wednesday. Feeling good about it. I am feeling good about the fact that they waited until after 4th of July to shut down Highway 54, essentially, John, right? We did get some exact dates, I believe, yesterday.
Monday, July 15th, the approaches to the Missouri River Bridge. Technically not the bridge itself, but
Correct.
I mean, it'll jam up your commute. And MoDOT's telling us they're going to reduce it to one lane in each direction. The on and off ramps, you had a question about that. They will all stay open. But delays on 54 could stretch for miles during the work, rest of the summer all the way into early September. And it could be a real challenge, I think, and we brought it up before on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, is that the lanes are going to be narrowed. I think they said down to about 10 feet or so. And that's a real issue for RVs and boats headed to the lake. Ooh, man.
Well, and like I brought up yesterday, I think emergency vehicles. I've been on that bridge where there's been enough room for us to kind of part the sea and let emergency vehicles through. So I have some serious concerns about that. I know I saw an article yesterday that our emergency personnel in mid-Missouri are talking about that and planning for that. But certainly, and I think of just regular folks trying to get to a hospital, one direction or another and having to hit miles of traffic. I hope they're still not telling us, because initially they said take alternate routes.
Yeah, what? Okay, that would be Boonville and Herman.
Or a ferry.
Yeah, or
Yeah, exactly.
a bass boat across the river. I still think that's a good idea. I think they should throw all the scooters over on the side of the river down. We can all scoot across that bike bridge. Maybe would be faster.
Idea.
But the problem is, John, you're going to be out by Select Turf. You're going to be out by the sod farm coming in. I mean, you're not
Right.
even, the traffic is going to start way before you even, I think, get to the bridge. Don't you think?
I think so. Well, I think the big challenge is, and MoDOT pointed it up, Brian can attest to it. They said look out especially on Friday afternoons and Sundays when the lake traffic is taking up 54. It could be a giant mess.
Yeah, I agree. John, you're spot on about the timing on that. And I would also add Saturdays are a very busy day as well because you got a lot of people traveling to the lake as well. But the bigger days are Friday and Sundays. And Stephanie, to your point, you hit it on the head. You're looking at traffic backing up. I go back to the day the governor signed the NIL bill. That highlighted for me everything I need to know about that tri-level. And you were stuck, Jen Bukowski was stuck in traffic for hours. And it is, I know MoDOT's going to do the best they can, and they're letting people know, quite frankly, there are no alternative routes. I mean, realistically, people don't have time to drive over to Boonville. But, it is what it is, and it's going to affect a lot of people. And it literally, that affected MoDOT. MoDOT employees couldn't get to the governor's, bill signing ceremony that day because of at least they were a little bit late getting there. But yeah, that's a potential mess. We also continue to receive reports, Stephanie, about power outages. Prairie Home is without power right now. We've gotten calls from people in Prairie Home. We've had listeners reporting the Jamestown area, which is west of Columbia, north of California, if you will. That area really with a lot of heavy rain. We've had listeners in Boonville that have said they've received almost 7 inches of rain. So this is just this overnight rain has just been way, way above what the National Weather Service was anticipating for mid-Missouri, and hence the flash flood warnings. You're getting the same text I am. Route Z is apparently water and a lot of tree debris covering the roads. A lot of people use that to get to Otscon Plant, and some of them go to Harley-Davidson through that way, but they just probably want to avoid Route Z right now. That would be east of Columbia.
Yeah, we're still continuing to get texts about rain totals I'm seeing 3.5 inches at Route Z, 2.2 in Ashland. I sure think it was more than that.
It was
Greg.
more. It was more than that.
2.5 just west of Sturgeon, but we were seeing some really high numbers. 6 inches in Millersburg from Darren. 6.25 inches just north of Macon. That's from Jim with a Y. So a lot of folks got a lot of water, but it was pretty varied overnight. But again, I think
When we hear almost 7 at Boonville.
Yeah. It's stopped here up in Columbia. I know when I left Ashland this morning, it was coming down with fury. Hannah and I had pretty harrowing rides in. There was a lot of water on the roadways. So give yourself some extra time. We will be talking about the construction a lot going forward and saying give yourself some extra time. But on mornings like this morning with the debris, with water over some roadways, just take it easy.
Take it easy, and I think it just highlights again what local radio is supposed to be about, and it's about service. It's about public service, and this, quite frankly, is bigger than any, I'm sorry, folks, election or anything else. This is much bigger. It affects more people, and it does in these road closures, not only this mess we're dealing with this morning with the rain, but what you're talking about with MoDOT, that let's call it what it is. It's a mess that's going to be starting after the 4th of July. Then we've also got the work that's going to be starting on I-70. It's just there is going to be a lot of work going on in a lot of, the governor made it clear to me when I talked to him. People are going to be impatient, and they're going to be mad at the governor. He knows that. But he just wants people to be patient.
He's on his way out.
How about 54 from Jefferson City to Kingdom City? That's the next big project. It's going to fall right in as well.
That's huge.
Well,
it really is. That's a big one.
And Brian, you always say MoDOT's listening, and so I'm going to give them a suggestion from listener Bryce. He said, hey, we need information out on Highway 70 because folks coming from Kansas City and St. Louis, there are alternate routes. So if you're coming from St. Louis, you could choose to come down on 50 at Herman or, anyway. So he said that's the point at where you need some information to let those folks know. Now, I think folks who frequent the lake have seen this, I think, and are aware. But certainly we get lots of visitors in the summer that wouldn't necessarily know about all the road work in mid-Missouri.
Well, look at all the Illinois tags you see at the lake and Iowa and places like that where people bring their big giant boats all the way in down 54 to the lake, and they could easily not know about this.
Well, and the guy that was allegedly driving drunk that hit the house last year, I think all those people are from Miami and the state of California. So your point's well taken. I will tell you that it has received, Stephanie and John, the press conference I was at when the governor made the announcement out at the Drury Inn. It was a very hot day that day, very windy. There were a lot of reporters from all over the state. Some were from Kansas City. I saw some from St. Louis as well. But you're right. The bulk of the media coverage on it has been in Columbia. And quite frankly, it is focused a lot on Columbia. I've seen very little coverage of the route over, to Kingdom City in Callaway County, which is where the work is going to be starting. That's going to have a big impact as well. But we'll continue to do it. It's been out on our Facebook page, KWS and 93.9 The Eagle. I've got stories planned for Monday reminding people about it, not just on the Columbia to Kingdom City stretch, but also I just was briefed just yesterday by Senator Denny Hoskins. We have some new numbers and some new really good information about the Roachport essentially to Boonville route, how that's going to be impacted by this railroad, basically the railroad, Union Pacific. So, yes, we'll have a lot of that. But I think what that gentleman is asking about, it sounds like he's asking maybe for highway signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I haven't seen any.
I haven't really either. Even in mid-Missouri, I feel like the signage could have been better preparing people because as people drive to the lake, many of these people are coming more than once. And so you could have, already been informing them, hey, this is coming. But I'm glad to hear we finally have a date. And again, I am feeling good about the fact that they waited a little bit. Although, as you've mentioned, Brian, getting into September starts to get into football season. And
it is.
For folks trying to get from Jeff City to Columbia, that's could be an issue.
It'll be an issue. It could be an issue for me. I mean, I do the college scoreboards out of a studio, and I have a trademark that I say, coming to you live from our Learfield studios, this is the Tiger Scoreboard Update. I may have to say, maybe not. I may have to say, coming to you live from my car stuck on the Missouri River Bridge. Brian Hauswirth, this is the Tiger Network from Learfield.
I love that. All right. Well, we will be providing updates and letting folks know. And I know a lot of people are in the same position as I am. Is we'll have to see that morning, and we'll have to see just how it goes. So we will be keeping you updated there. We'll also be keeping you updated in the next 24 hours on the weather forecast for tomorrow. It's not looking great. It's looking like some more rain, and we've got a lot of events planned, fireworks planned, parades planned. So we'll be doing our best to let you know the weather situation and what's on and what's off. Certainly here on the Eagle and on KWOS.
And
Brian, a thought for
our
fall
Facebook
football
pages as well.
Yeah, a thought for fall football. Look on the bright side. Maybe the traffic will delay Texas and Oklahoma from being able to make it in on game day weekend now that they've joined the SEC.
Yes, and Texas welcomed themselves. Basically, you're right. You bring up a very good point. I am going to update once we hear from Sydney Olson in Columbia Parks and Recreation tomorrow. I'll get updates on our website and also on 93.9 The Eagle Facebook page and KWS as well about the fireworks display. But just looking at this forecast right now, it does not look good.
Well,
it just doesn't.
I'm going to put you on the spot, but we had the opening game for Mizzou
Murray State.
And it's a Thursday night
Yes,
game.
it is.
I heard earlier this week it is not yet sold out, but we had a lot of sellouts last year, and so I know we want that first game to be sold out. So make sure you are checking the schedule already and getting your tickets because it's expected that it will sell out. And I know we also heard that applications for Mizzou are up significantly, and I think a lot of it. Yep. Tell us what it is, John, or what, Brian.
Well, Doug Flutie,
BC,
1984. He threw a Hail Mary pass against the Miami Hurricanes. One of the, just absolutely incredible. Brent Musburger and Ara Parsegan called it. It was a huge upset. I don't know what to compare it to. It was unheard of. The Hurricanes had a dynasty in the 1980s, and this young guy, Doug Flutie, at Boston College, Gerald Phelan, by the way, his roommate, caught the pass. It had a huge impact. Brent Musburger was literally speechless. For him to be speechless tells you a lot because he usually has a lot to say. And the enrollment at Boston College in Chestnut Hill skyrocketed, at least for a couple of years. And I think what Curtis Gregory, the representative, said yesterday is with the Mizzou success, 10-2, we're going to see that same thing here. And I will tell you, if the college playoff expansion had existed last year, Mizzou would have been in there. They could have competed with anybody, and they held Ohio State to 3 points. That was pretty impressive. So I hope for a big turnout as well. It's a Thursday night game that may impact a little bit in terms of people coming in from out of town, but they usually have a pretty good.
They said they like those Thursday night games though in the early season because then folks can still go to the lake on the weekends because people are
like they used to say at Boston College, Hail Flutie.
Oh gosh, that was a great almost 40 years ago. By the way, the Jefferson City audience on KRCG, and John will remember this. They missed that. He was on CBS, but because the Jays and Helias were playing at that day, KRCG, no, seriously, they aired, and rightfully so, the high school games, which were just as big, but they didn't know about the Hail Mary until afterwards when Rod Smith had to do it in his sportscast. Locally, it was not shown because it was either the Jays or Helias were playing, but both played that day.
I love a good Hauswirth history lesson on our Feel Good Wednesday. I also want to give you a heads up. We heard from Chris Kelly of Boone County Emergency Management earlier today. There will be a test today of the sirens. It will be an extended test about midday, I believe, starting at noon. So if you hear those sirens and they're going off for a while, that is a test, and so you should be aware of that. All right, coming up next, we are going to do What's Hot with Hannah.
We often on the show, John and I both, in our segments, we like to highlight dumb criminals in the news doing dumb things. And I found one from El Paso, and it involves an imaginary child. So a 19-year-old, her name is Stacy Smith, real generic. Stacy Smith from El Paso on Sunday was arrested after calling 911 to report that her friend's car had been stolen and that her child was inside of the car. So, of course, police take this very seriously. They pretty much put all available officers on it. They're searching the El Paso area, desperately trying to find this car that has a child in it, only to find the car with no child. And so they panic again because where's this kid at? A small toddler. Come to find out, Stacy thought it was a good idea to tell the police that there was a kid in the car so that they would look for her friend's car and find it faster.
So it wasn't like it was intentional.
Right. She her fear was that if she didn't do that, I guess the police weren't going to move fast enough for her liking. And so she cooked up this scheme. They found the car quickly. And she also quickly found herself with some charges.
They wasted no time on that in that department, huh?
Yeah, no, that was also swift.
You've got the car, but unfortunately you can't drive it because you will be sitting in jail.
Yeah,
that's
that's
she should have thought that one through.
Yeah, that's making a false report. So
certainly
don't pull a Stacy.
All right. Well, I'm getting a text too. Nathan is giving us an update. And Hannah, I know, has been distraught about this all week.
Yeah. Nathan, listen, I covered this earlier in the week. It might have been Monday for What's Hot with Hannah, and it did not get the appreciation that it deserved, so I'm going to cover it again. Charlotte the Stingray from North Carolina, who they thought was pregnant with some shark hybrid pups.
That we've been following for months.
Yeah, since like February or March. She's dead. So I
shouldn't laugh, but
she got super famous on TikTok because they thought that she might have asexually reproduced or that she was going to have some like weird shark stingray hybrid babies. For months, the aquarium was saying any day now she's going to give birth. And then in May, they announced that she wasn't actually pregnant. She just had a reproductive disease. And then Sunday, late at night, they announced that she kicked the can.
So sad. Nathan, Hannah is mourning the loss of special for you on Friday. Randy will be back on Monday. We hope everyone has a very happy and safe 4th of July. We are having a good week. Keep your eye, give yourself some extra time outside. There's a lot of water. We've been getting some reports of some debris on the roadways, so keep aware this morning. But now I am joined by my sister, Sara Amick, is in studio with us.
Hey, good
She
morning.
is visiting Mid-Missouri for the holidays, and I thought now would be a good time to chat with her. As most of you know, the state legislature passed a new bill this year that would allow potentially a charter school in Boone County. Now, Sara has joined us before, but at the time she was teaching for a charter school, so I think there were some.
Now we can get all the tea.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's interesting because Sara also taught in Jeff City Public Schools for a
Yes.
number of years, so she
Yep.
kind of has the experience of both sides. And I had an opportunity to visit both schools as well. So I've learned a lot. But I think had I not had a teacher or in my life of a charter school, I would have a lot of questions too. And so for
Absolutely.
parents
Yeah.
who are in a traditional public school, maybe CPS right now, who are thinking, okay, so what happens if Boone County gets a charter school? And certainly there are a lot of different types and forms, but let's talk generally a little bit. We've already got some questions on the texter. And if you have a question about what a charter school is, what it looks like, what a day there is like, text us 874-9390. But David is saying, what exactly is a charter school? Is it just a private school that an individual has to pay for out of pocket? No, David.
No,
it's not.
David. A charter school is a public school, and it's a public school with basically means it has greater autonomy with higher accountability. So the autonomy comes from, how the day is structured, what kind of curriculum they use, and how they, structure their day, and the higher accountability with when it comes to test scores, when it comes to meeting, the goals that it sets forth. And yeah. So,
When I think about private schools, David, I think about two things. So first of all, he said, do I have to pay?
you don't have to pay. It's completely free. It's just like another public school. You sign up for it just like you register for any other. When you're registering for school in the fall, you just check that box. You want to go to a charter school. And mostly if they have availability, like this charter school I worked for, as long as we had room, you could come and join from wherever you were in the city.
And my understanding in research in other cities where there's limited availability, at that point, it's still free, but you enter some sort of lottery where if more people sign up, then they draw randomly and hopefully you get in. Then once you're in, you basically get to stay in the program.
Yes.
All right. So, and the other thing I think about private schools is, okay, so now you have to apply. That's, when I think about private schools, it's like, okay, I have to apply.
Yeah. And the charter school, typically you don't. It's a public school, and it just has basically the charter they write is a plan for how they're going to do things maybe differently than a traditional public school, and so they may not have as many mandates to how they teach and how they go about their instruction.
Well, and I think the other thing I think about a private school is like it's only for the wealthy, and and maybe that is from some of those things like, well, I have to pay for it or whatever. Talk about your particular charter school. What did the student population look like?
Yeah, it was both socioeconomic and differently. There's a variety of both from people from a dozen different countries, dozens of languages, all backgrounds. When it came, so it was open to all, and that's what's really great. And it was really about being intentional with students is what charter schools offer. I think a different version of doing maybe a traditional style of teaching, where I got to be a reading teacher and I only taught reading, and I got to be really good at that, and it really has a huge impact on student achievement.
Sara, when the bill got signed into law here in Missouri, almost all the Boone County school superintendents sent a letter to the governor not to support it, not to sign it into law. And one of their arguments was, well, what about the smaller school districts? If they lose 100 or 200 kids to a charter school, will they still be viable? Is that an argument?
I think when it comes down to it, students need a great education, and so having options, I think, is really a great thing that families want and families need. And so I think if you're offering great education and if your school is offering a great education, you're going to be all right.
Well, and I think you are not. You experienced a little bit of that in your charter network in Nashville, in that you opened one school, you wanted to open more schools, and there was some pushback from some of the education establishment. But ultimately, there was so much demand from parents and the community that they ended up actually being successful in opening multiple schools, right?
We went from 1 to now 4 schools.
And that's in a pretty short time frame.
Within 8 years,
Talk about what it takes, like as far as parental and community support.
Yeah, definitely. We couldn't do it without the families rallying together. They also work with the Charter Coalition to, get the word out about the great things that are happening within the school, and partnering with local businesses to get the word out again, to let people know that it's not something scary, or we're not trying to take away from anything that's going on. We're just offering a great quality education.
I always found it so interesting because I know when you were in a traditional public school with younger kids, you have to teach all of the subjects. And I think you described it earlier as autonomy. I kind of think it more as flexibility. And kind of delegating, taking some of the rigor and some of those standards away from the people in Jefferson City and the Truman Building, telling you as a teacher how you must structure your day, and letting and empowering teachers and those within the school that are on the ground with the students to make those decisions. And I think one of those, and I think you will laugh at this hopefully, but one of the things is, Sarah, you shouldn't really be teaching anybody math, and we all know this. Man,
any of us for that matter.
My parents are out there, and they
right here.
But Sarah should not be teaching other people
to
math.
Me, I see.
But I mean, but teaching is your gift, and you were a really good teacher. But
I still am.
And reading and now you teach adults. But reading and writing is like you're passionate about it. You love it. It's where you are the best. And I think for me, I think it was interesting that teaching in a traditional public school, you didn't have a choice. You had to teach all of the subjects. Now, obviously, you can teach people addition, right, and subtraction, whatever. But I think I really saw you thrive, and I think at your school, because again, you were able in fourth grade-ish to just teach just reading and writing and specialize in that. And I think that has to reflect in the test scores, right? When you're passionate about the subject, it's your area, and the kids are getting the subject matter from someone who's basically a subject matter expert.
Yeah, absolutely. And, getting really good at your craft over the last 8 years, it just makes you more well-rounded when it comes to communicating with parents about students' progress, because I could walk, I knew exactly where every student is. I served over 100 students a year and knew exactly where they were and where they were going, and could communicate their growth. And that's such a powerful thing with students, with parents. And we ended up being, one of the top performing schools in the district year after year, and even in the state because we still have to perform our state tests and still have to outperform. We try to outperform the districts around us, and we do every year because of this very tailored method.
Well, and I think John brought up the fact that, there has been pushback from the education establishment. And I think, hearing it from your side, it was almost like you all took that as a challenge. Like, we know we're getting all of this criticism, so it's not okay for us to just be in the mix. We have to overperform because if we want to grow, if we want to open new schools or whatever. So you took that accountability really seriously.
Yeah, and also partnering with, other schools in the district, what is going well, what are best practices out there, and let's partner together and learn from each other. And I think that's something also that because charters have a more of a freedom to kind of innovate in a way that traditional public schools may not be able to, because they're being mandated from the top down per se. And so we can learn from each other. But I think, being able to innovate in creative ways, fail quickly, and then get out the best practices out there, and doing what's best for kids quicker. And I think that's what charters can offer.
Sure.
Sarah, for a lot of people out there, maybe your parents' age, we can all relate to when St. Louis went the route of the magnet schools with Central Performing Arts and Vashon and Soldan and all the schools that were in the inner city and all. Are those charter schools?
That's different. Magnet schools are different, and so I can't really totally speak to that because I'm not totally familiar, especially when it comes to Missouri. But I think it's another option, that
there's nothing that prevents a charter school from kind of having a specialization of sorts if that's how they choose.
Well, and it's like the charter that you write out. You write out a plan, and then you've got goals that you say, I'm based on this plan, I'm going to reach these sort of metrics, these sort of test scores or whatever. You do that, you stay open. If you don't do that, then you close. And I think that's the difference too, is like there's high accountability that we have to be able to back up what we say we're going to do.
Now, I hate going back to COVID times, but I do think it was one area in where I saw like the quickness and the flexibility. And I know here in Missouri, schools shut down very quickly, and it seemed like the schools were waiting for the people in Jeff City to decide what needed to happen and how they were going to do that and what was going to, and so we just like sat around for a while waiting to figure out, are we doing online school? Are we closed? Like, what's going on? And I think within 3 days, y'all had
less than that, like 48 hours. Yeah.
Within 48 hours, you were teaching full time online, basically all day. We did like 1 hour and then we did worksheets all day, but you were instructing live. And I think, not that I wish, something like the pandemic on us again, but when you're faced with challenges, I think having that autonomy, I think, as you put it, really gave you some advantages there.
Yeah. And being able to say, hey, we set out to be a great school and offer a high quality education. And so we're going to keep doing that, whether it's, we had to figure it out. And I said, our students need to continue to learn. They need to feel safe. And so we got laptops where we deployed laptops out. And then, from there, we're like, I just did what I did in the classroom. And I'm like, how do we do this online? And you just kind of build a plane yourself as trying to fly it. But we knew that we had to keep the learning going, and these kids deserve that, and all kids deserve that. And so, rallying together to keep it going, and we did. And then we ended up still, I think they call it Blue Ribbon School here, but we end up being a reward school for the next several years, even with the challenges that came with the pandemic. So
yeah, well, Sarah, thank you for joining us on Charter Schools. I know for Boone County, I'm really excited. I'm excited about the conversation, learning more about that structure, about the opportunities for our kids that aren't available now.
her house after the delivery driver left her package jammed up against her front door. Holly has got 7,000 likes on her TikTok, added a caption that says, "Amazon, we're still stuck. It's been 3 hours. We're trying to wave down the neighbor." She goes on to explain how the package from Amazon that was a cardboard cutout of Star Wars character Anakin Skywalker. She flips the camera around. You can see through the front door a large Amazon box is jammed in between the storm door and the door. And she says, "We can't open the door. Oh, God, we're stuck." So the neighbor responded and said, "Yeah, you can call the cops, but they'll just laugh at you." Holly had a later video that showed her out in public, so we don't know exactly what happened, but not the only customer to have an Amazon delivery fail. Another customer said the driver delivered their package and threw it on the roof. After realizing the customer's front gate was locked, he said, "I'll just throw it over the fence," landed on the roof, prompting the customer to say only Santa gets a free pass at delivering packages to your roof. So now you know the rest of that Amazon story.
Hannah, do we have an update from your Amazon fail? You had, 2 wet books the other day?
Yeah, I had ordered books on Amazon, and they came in one of those recycled cardboard mailers. So it wasn't a box, it was still a pouch, but it was kind of a cardboard material. It got delivered after dark, which is kind of sketchy. And it rained all night, and it was so saturated in water that when I picked it up, the bag ripped. But I got books, and they weren't wrapped in plastic or anything, so they were totally ruined. I did return them. They sent me new copies. All is well.
Oh, well, that's really
All is well.
nice. Oh, a story. We love a story with a happy ending.
Well, that would have been like an Amazon delivery this morning up around Boonville or somewhere.
Well, and we
package
are
would float away.
Yeah, we are getting some updates. Let's see who's texting this. James is letting us know if you live out on Route E, Twin Bridges is flooded, and also Locust Grove Midway is flooded. He said he had to take the Harrisburg route to 63 to get to town. We've heard some issues with Route Z. Some places we've heard reports of 5 to 6 inches of rain. So give yourself some extra time. And if you
watch out for the flash flooding in all the usual places.
That's right, John. That's right. So if you have another update about roads or rain, you can always text us at 573-874-9390. I did see this, I guess, John, your gal went viral on TikTok. I saw another viral TikTok, and they said, you know what you should do, especially if you live in the city and you've got these package dealers, you should use an Amazon box as your kitty litter box. And then when you're done with it, just close it on up and put it on your porch and just wait for someone to steal it. And I said, if you're dealing with porch pirates, that sounds like a pretty good way to deal with them, I think.
Once in high school, when it was a citywide pickup, my dad told me, go put that old TV out of the garage, one of the big tube-type TVs. Put it out there. Take the trash out while you're at it. I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I stuck the trash in the back of the TV, put it on the curb. Man, it's gone in a half hour.
Oh, John.
Didn't even have to wait for a trash collection.
Heck
That
no.
is hilarious. All right, some local updates for you. If you're in Boone County, we are expecting an extended test of the siren system around noon today. So
Weather permitting.
But it is planned right now. So if you hear that siren going off for a while, then it's most likely a test. Again, that's scheduled for around noon, and I think they're doing it by zone, so it might not be right at noon, but be aware of that today. Also, those Boone County applications for property tax relief are open. I think that opened up this week, so make sure you are aware of.
Have you applied yet,
that.
Steph?
Are you kidding me, Hannah? Rude. Rude. Although I do have a lot of questions. I mean, what'd they say? Like, if you're married to someone older, that you qualify. And I'm just thinking, what would prevent Hannah from putting her parents on her house on her deed and then claiming the senior tax relief, right?
They don't live in Boone County either.
Well, the question I had: what if you have your home in a trust? I
Right.
wonder how that works.
I think
if you've got younger people in the trust, I don't know.
There's FAQ
marriage. Calling 911. High fives. The last French guillotine execution. CNN. Ciabatta bread. And over 95% of the U.S. population.
That's where we're at, folks. And we've got some new polling out that we will get to later today. And so we're having a little bit of fun because it feels like a Friday today. But we're also sticking with the hard news as well. Of course, if you missed the interview with Sophia about the delegates to the RNC convention, we did that at 6:35. You can always catch that later on the podcast. But now we are glad to be joined by Zack Smith of Heritage Foundation. So much going on at SCOTUS. There was some big news out yesterday in that presidential immunity decision apparently has delayed the sentencing in the Trump case. Zack, tell us the latest on that.
Yeah, President Trump's lawyers filed a motion, and Judge Juan Merchan surprisingly agreed to delay the sentencing. And it's interesting, Stephanie, because essentially the basis for their motion stems from one of the provisions in the Trump immunity claim where Chief Justice John Roberts said that not only is a president immune from prosecution for actions that fall within his core function as the president, and not only does the president enjoy a presumption of immunity for his other official acts, but that evidence could not be used against him in a criminal prosecution for actions where he would otherwise enjoy immunity. And so President Trump's lawyers filed a motion to set aside the sentencing, to delay the sentencing while they brief the issue. And so for now, that sentencing has been delayed at least until September, and we'll have to wait and see what happens then.
Now, does the J6th Supreme Court case affect Trump's case there in D.C.? I mean, we were kind of hearing there's the 2 counts about obstruction. Is it your opinion that it will knock those out?
Yeah, it's absolutely going to affect those counts. That's the Fisher case, Fisher versus United States, where the Supreme Court essentially said that the Justice Department and the lower federal courts had interpreted too broadly a federal statute that had essentially been used to prosecute Mr. Fisher, been used to prosecute many of the January 6th defendants, and is also part of the charges against President Trump. And so certainly in the wake of the Fisher decision, some of the charges Jack Smith brought against Donald Trump will absolutely be affected. And it looks like at this point, when you look at the Fisher case, when you look at the immunity case, Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump is an absolute shambles. There's certainly no way that the Washington, D.C. case is going to go to trial before the election in November. And it's hard to see what counts will really remain even after that. And it's interesting, Stephanie, I saw in the news recently that apparently the prosecution, Jack Smith's team, has said that even if Donald Trump were to win in November, they plan to move forward all the way through Inauguration Day in January. And so that's unfortunate, but it looks like that, Jack Smith, even though he's facing a very difficult uphill battle in his prosecutions, plans to continue moving forward with them for now.
Zack, what's this do to the planning for Trump's lawyers on the appeals in the criminal case? Do they have to go back and rethink that, or do they have this maybe in the background built in?
Well, the court for the New York appeal, I think they're going to move forward with that. They're probably going to raise some of these same issues as well. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the New York State court system. But then keep in mind, there are also the 2 federal criminal cases that are moving forward as well. And I think one issue in particular is going to be very interesting to watch. Justice Clarence Thomas, he wrote a separate concurring opinion, basically meaning he agreed with the court's judgment. He was just explaining a different issue he wanted to address. And Justice Clarence Thomas said that in his view, special counsel Jack Smith was unconstitutionally appointed, and that the lower federal court should address that issue, whether or not his appointment was constitutional, before it reached any of the other issues. Now, part of the reason that's so interesting is that Judge Eileen Cannon, who's overseeing the documents case out of Mar-a-Lago in Florida, he heard briefing on that very issue several weeks ago. And so particularly in light of Justice Thomas's concurring opinion, it'll be interesting to see what Judge Cannon does with that issue. And it'll also be interesting to see whether Judge Tanya Chutkan, who's overseeing the D.C. prosecution, chooses to take up that issue as well.
Now, everyone likes to talk about themselves, and I like the fact that Missouri has been on the forefront of some of these really big fights, one being on the social media front. And we, I think, originally referred to this as Missouri v. Biden. Now it's Murphy v. Missouri. But a huge First Amendment case. That case came down, I believe it was last week. It's been some time now. But then we also got some additional social media rulings out of other states this last week. So talk to us about Murphy and then about those follow-up social media cases.
Yeah, so Murphy versus Missouri is a very important social media case. I'm sure as all of your listeners recall, this was essentially the case where the Biden administration was pressuring big tech companies, social media companies, to remove information that the Biden administration disagreed with, that the Biden administration found harmful, particularly as it related to COVID-19. Now, it was unfortunate, the decision that came out of the court, because essentially the court punted. They didn't address the merits of the case. They essentially said that no one had standing to bring this suit. That meant that no party could show an injury sufficient to be able to move forward in order for the courts to reach the merits. Now, part of the reason the court's decision to kick that case on standing is so controversial is because the court's standing doctrine is absolutely a mess. Standing at its core is about the separation of powers. It's based on Article 3 of our Constitution, which says that the federal courts can only hear cases and controversies, which means that unless you have an actual injury, you can show you're actually harmed by an action, you don't have a case or controversy, you can't bring suit. But starting in the 1960s, 1970s, the court really expanded its standing doctrine. Particularly, they were very generous in allowing left-leaning environmental groups to bring suit. And so there's a concern that the court essentially games its standing decisions. It says there's no standing when it just doesn't want to reach the merits, which often happens when cases are brought by conservative groups. And yet it tends to find standing in many instances when left-leaning groups bring cases. And so I think that'll be something to watch. Some of the justices, and once again, including Justice Clarence Thomas, have been very critical of the court's standing doctrine. And in this case, Justice Samuel Alito, who dissented from the court's decision in Murphy versus Missouri, said that this was one of the most important First Amendment cases to come before the court in recent memory, and that it was unfortunate that the court chose not to address the merits. Now, in terms of the other two cases, there were the net choice cases, one out of Florida, one out of Texas. Essentially, the court sent those back to the lower federal courts for some further development, and it revolves around whether states can pass laws prohibiting big tech companies from deplatforming people based on their viewpoints.
Now, I think it's been getting overshadowed by the presidential immunity decision, but would you agree with me that the most important case of this term was Chevron?
Certainly one of the most important cases. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. You're not going to tell me it is the most? Which one was more important than overturning Chevron?
Well, there's so many to choose from this year, Stephanie, and you're absolutely right. I think the Loper Bright and Relentless cases that overturned Chevron deference certainly have fallen through the cracks with the Trump immunity case, with some of the very other administrative law cases that have come down. But look, in terms of pushing back against the administrative state, in terms of rebalancing the appropriate balance of power between our branches of government, overturning Chevron deference is absolutely going to be one of the most important cases we talk about for many, many years. And for your listeners, Chevron deference, it stems from the 1980s. It's a court decision involving the Chevron Corporation, where essentially the Supreme Court said that lower courts could defer to unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats whenever those bureaucrats determine what the law means. Now, imagine that. Courts deferring to these individuals who are often interpreting laws in ways that give themselves vast amounts of power. And so, fortunately, in these two decisions that the court handed down, Loper Bright and Relentless, the court said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to determine for ourselves what the law means. And so hopefully what this means, Stephanie, is that Congress will once again have to do its job, pass laws, and that courts will once again do their jobs and determine what those laws mean, and that these unelected bureaucrats won't be making as many important decisions that impact our day-to-day lives.
Zach, I had a question from somebody who works for Missouri or did work for Missouri state government and said, how does the Chevron ruling affect anything on the state level? And they brought up the angle of administrative law judges who in Missouri make decisions in labor dispute cases.
Right. That would have to be something that takes place at the state level. We've seen some states like Ohio, for example, they've done away with Chevron deference at the state level for state law claims. And so that's certainly something that is worth looking at in Missouri to see how courts are applying, if they have a state level equivalent to Chevron deference. And if so, it would be good to push back and seek to get that overturned as well.
Let's talk quickly about the next term. So we're done, but we are hearing what the court has granted, what cases they plan to hear next term. So of those, which ones have caught your eye so far?
Well, the court's granted relatively few cases so far for next term, Stephanie. Obviously, they'll be back in October after they take their summer hiatus. Typically, right before they come back and begin the term at the end of September, they have what's called the long conference where all the justices come back. They typically grant a lot of cases for the upcoming term at that long conference. What caught my eye in particular, the court released an orders list yesterday where they sent a number of pending Second Amendment cases back to the lower federal courts for reevaluation and reexamination in light of another decision that the court issued this term, the Rahimi case, where essentially the court upheld a federal law that made it a federal crime for someone subject to a domestic violence order to be in possession of a firearm. And so it looks like a lot of these Second Amendment cases are going to go back to the lower federal courts for reevaluation. So we may see some more Second Amendment cases being granted. The court did grant some interesting cases for the upcoming term, but there's really nothing that's a blockbuster, I would say, in terms of what we saw this term. This term, there was so much happening. There's Trump immunity, there's Chevron deference, there's the Jarchese case about whether you're entitled to a jury trial or whether admin agencies can take certain actions. There was the Corner Post case about whether the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, whether its funding was constitutional. There was the Fisher case involving the January 6th defendants. And so at least so far, there's some interesting admin law issues, some interesting, issues related to veterans claims that the court's likely to take up, but nothing really that's a blockbuster like we saw this term so far.
Nothing that's a blockbuster yet. All right. Well, I always appreciate insights from Heritage. There's so much good information on your website, so I'd encourage folks to check that out. Of course, you have one of the best databases of election fraud that I think is out there. And so we just appreciate your work and appreciate you joining us this morning.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me on this morning. Always enjoy talking with you.
yesterday. Good news. All of the indexes were up. We've got Dow at 0.41, NASDAQ. Let's do S&P next. S&P at 0.62, NASDAQ at 0.84. So a good day finally as we look at what was driving those gains. Financials and consumer discretionary up big yesterday. Also communication services. As we look at what the market is prepared to do today, Dow is sitting right about even. S&P, NASDAQ down just slightly. Now, we've heard some rumblings out of D.C. and the swamp that Bernie Sanders thinks that everyone should only go to work. He and all of Gen Z, Hannah.
Now, wait a second.
That you guys should only have to work 4 days a week.
Yeah.
We're going to the 4-day school week. I'm real nervous about this, but I think when I think about your generation, and I don't fault you actually for this. You went through COVID and all that, and so I see a lot about my generation. I feel like it was just hustle culture, which I think can be unhealthy.
Oh, for sure. Like the toxic positivity. Yeah.
Of just grindstone. But I think for you all, like going through COVID, you're like, actually, like work-life balance matters. And maybe there are some more important things out there than just, hustling all of the time.
I will agree with that.
But I think your generation and Bernie Sanders have swung a little bit too far on that pendulum.
I'm
and
not surprised to hear you say that.
I would like us to return to, and I saw someone's tweet the other day, and they're like, you would be surprised at if you just show up on time in a good mood, ready to work.
You have to be in a good mood when you show up?
I'm usually in a good mood, but if you'll be ahead of 90% of people. And the truth in that statement, if you're on time, you're ready to work, you're in a good mood, I think I would agree. Having lived through the last couple of years, having talked to my friends who own businesses and talk about the hiring situation, you'll be ahead of the game. But I think so. I am, and Europeans, they really get a bad rap, and as they should. I think I love my European friends, but I'll email them in the middle of the summer and I'll be like, hey, can I get can I check in on this? And I just get the out of office, and they're like, we're on holiday for a month. We'll see you later.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't even check their email. And so I feel like they always get a bad rap, but Greece is coming back. And they said they've actually introduced a 6-day work week.
Immediately no.
Officially.
Wow.
They said it's going to help with their struggling economy. Labor unions have denounced this as barbaric, but they've changed their regulations to allow these 6-day work weeks. And I think, go Greece.
I thought you were trying to work John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John into the discussion. So that Grease.
I
Okay.
think
She didn't have enough time to put on the leather leggings in the break.
Well, I think, if you think that would be strange here, 6-day work weeks would be really strange in Europe. But I think, I think allowing for that, if that's what makes sense for your business, is smart. And I think having the government tell you that you can only have 4 days or only 5 days the 4th, and as the older sister has the right to do, I have already announced that I will be stealing that hat
I
from
actually
her.
can confirm this. I heard this conversation.
Also, you can see Hannah
allow it.
is rocking a really sweet wake-up hat, which she rocked at the Anchorfest. It's
a little DIY project.
super cute. And if you haven't seen our shirts, you need to check out our latest merch. And we have some left over that we might be giving away in the future, maybe, Hannah?
Yeah. Stay tuned.
If you see me, I will be around at some parades. I'm going to have some wake-up swag on me. So if you're a listener and you see me, come find me, and I might have something for you. So
How about that?
yeah, right? Well, I am pleased to also, if you're watching the video feed, you will see my dad, who we call Pops, is in the studio. And this is his first time on air with me, but not his first time on air with Mr. Marsh. I remember...
Steve's an old hand at being on the radio.
I remember literally as a young girl hearing you guys spar over who has the best chili in town. And it was one of my favorite memories, really.
Well, and I feel like, the legendary Pops is, famous in Jeff City. I feel like we have a celebrity on with us.
A little bit. When we used to go around town, it was like we could never get anywhere because it was like, do you know everybody? And I think, that's part of the fun of growing up in a mid-Missouri town with small businesses is a lot of the folks know each other. But
Kept everybody's lights on for decades, so.
And now that person is you, Stephanie.
Oh, it is? Oh, I do? Just following in the footsteps.
Well, you just got to love people. That's all there is to it.
Build a lot of relationships. Well, okay, so we were going to ask you because we obviously here on the Eigel, we do a lot of fundraising for the Honor Flight.
Mm-hmm.
And we were recently hearing more about the National Veterans Memorial down in Perryville. You took a trip here recently. So tell it out of mid-Missouri, I think on a bus, right? Tell us about your day.
Well, it was with Mid-America Vets. I think I got that right. Sometimes I don't pay as much attention as I should about certain things. But anyway, it is down in Perryville. And the reason it's the actual wall down there. And for the guy that had the land, which I think there's 26 acres, he was in Vietnam. And he made a promise to the guys he served with there that he would build some kind of memorial or something just for them. But it ended up that was for all vets. I would you go down. We had a nice bus, good people on it. We got down there, and of course we ate lunch down there, and not at the memorial, but in town there at Perryville. But they have the actual wall there, and you can still see guys going down there, as you'd see in the wall in Washington, with their hands up on the wall, their heads bowed down. They were either praying or they were crying, one of the two. And they got a museum down there that is worth going to. The people down there that run it are fantastic people. The guy that owns I didn't get to meet him, but I assume that he's a fantastic guy. He'd have to be to do something like that. But they've raised money for it, done a lot of work on it. They're still doing more work on it. My advice to anybody that's coming to Missouri or people in Missouri, is to go down there and see that, because it is pretty amazing.
And I think a lot of people are familiar with the traveling wall. And of course, with your involvement with the Marine Corps League, I know it's come to Jefferson City many times, but I was surprised when you recounted it to me that this is the full scale. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's neat that, for a lot of veterans who are getting up in age, maybe you're not able to go to Washington, D.C. to see the wall. So that the fact that we can go right here in Missouri and see it's really neat. I have some audio I want to play for you. I haven't played it yet, and Hannah's looking at me like, can you do this, Stephanie? I can. It went viral yesterday on Twitter, and I think specifically with being a veteran, I think it gave me chills, so I wanted you all to hear it. Let me see if I can get this now. This is Congressman Wesley Hunt. He was doing an interview and recounted the story about Trump that I thought was really interesting.
I'm going to give you my favorite President Trump story. This is my number one favorite of all time. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you.
Yay.
And the translator goes,
bug-eyed.
And Trump goes, tell him.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room. I'm going to give you my favorite.
And I thought that was so perfect.
What a mic drop.
What a mic drop. And I mean, isn't that who you want leading your military, Pops?
Well, sure. You stop to think about it, how important your military is to our freedom. That's the people that's got our freedom for us, kept our freedom for us, and that's the way it'll always be, as far as I'm concerned. I was thinking the other day, you talk about this, you talk about Biden, and he was talking the other day about same old crap, but he got on there and said that the cannibals, if I'm not mistaken, had eaten his uncle, Well, my problem with that is they ate the wrong Biden, No. Sorry, guys. Had to be said.
When I heard this yesterday, though, about President Trump, it reminded me so much of you, because the exact conversation that it reminded me of was when my husband went to ask for my hand. And I think you said basically what Trump said to the Taliban leader: if you harm a hair on her head, don't forget I know where you live. And so it was very reminiscent.
And he's been a good one, I'll tell you.
Now, something that Brian talks a lot about, and I think and reminds us, is that Missouri has encountered like this huge shift over the last many years. And it used to be that it was very Democrat, especially in the rural areas.
Very much.
And so you're very much a Trump supporter now, but that wasn't always the case. In fact, your dad served in the House as a rural Democrat.
Yes, he was.
And unions were in your background. So can you talk a little bit about that shift? Do you think you left the Democrat Party, or you think they left you?
I personally, I think they left me. Of course, we all think different, We all think different. What are we looking for in life? Well, that's a good question, and we don't know till it's usually about over. But we would sit around our tables in the morning. I mean, this was when my uncles and all of them, because they were all union people, and that was the talk. You talk Democrats. But, and I even went and saw Clinton one time, him up at St. Louis. Pat and I did, my wife.
And I think your frequent line to me is, I've regretted it every day since.
That was one and last time, might I say. So anyway, but I think a lot of times what happens is we get older, things change, or some of us are lucky enough to not have to worry about it. There's a Democrat, and I'm going to stay a Democrat, and I don't give a darn what happens. I'm going to stay a Democrat. Well, that's not the way you should think. You shouldn't think that way. I've got
owning a business influenced your decision to kind of come over to the right side?
Without a doubt. It did make a difference, and I feel sorry for the small businesses. I really do, because it's a constant battle for them. And there's nobody. I shouldn't say there's nobody there to help them, because that's not being fair, but the help they get is from their states. They don't get it from their federal government. They don't care.
You bring up so many great points, and thank you for your service, by the way. You're doing a really nice job. Two really quick points that I would make to what he is saying here about rural areas And I'll start in Marshall. We had Curtis Gregory on. When I worked in Carrollton 30 years ago, Marshall, Saline County was all Democrat. Ike Skelton, Jim Mathewson represented from Sedalia, Tom Marshall, Governor Carnahan was up there a lot. Now it's completely Republican. And when Kit Bond first campaigned, he ran for Congress in 1968, if people forget that. Then became governor, but he when he campaigned, he was a Republican, and actually an elderly woman, a Democrat, answered the door, and he said, "I'm Kit Bond, a Republican." She said, "I want you to meet my husband." She thought he was from outer space, literally, because he was a Republican. That was just unheard of. And now that area is completely Republican as well. And I just say one other thing: my dad, 4th generation bricklayer in St. Louis, very union family. Definitely a lot. The union people I know don't like right to work, but growing up, a lot of those union guys, and I know today, voted and vote Republican.
Yeah,
and they've certainly backed Richard Nixon. I can tell you that.
Fly.
Yeah. They don't say that in front of the locals.
The business manager.
No, they don't. But there was a Republican bricklayer from South St. Louis County. His name was Raish. When I was growing up, he was a Republican union bricklayer, and he was a Republican state representative. And that was about 40 years ago, and that was almost unheard of. Yeah. But he won. He was there for several terms. So interesting. Thank you for your service.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not totally against the way people think, and that's what it's all about.
Sure.
We're because of our freedoms, we're allowed to say, do pretty much what we think, and if some of these people in this country would take a look at other countries, how they're treated. I mean, these third world countries, they don't get the right. There's dictators and they don't get the right to vote. They just say, this is who's going to be, and you're going to like it.
And you don't have the right to speak your mind and disagree. I think we can all agree today as we enter the 4th of July holiday season that we live in the greatest country on earth.
Still are.
All right. Well, coming up next, we're going to do a little winners and losers. If you want
losers, but our real winners are what? What did we estimate? 250 of us who all got together for the big debate and joined us at Lakeside Ashland. So you guys were the real winners there to come on by. The governor, you're kind of ending up in the loss column this time around. With the 170 line item vetoes and pulling the plug on $8 million from the conference center parking garage project. And the one we also mentioned who has to go on our loser list, Kelsey Lynn Schnetzler of Salisbury, Missouri, the individual who tried to get away with $24,000 worth of Missouri lottery tickets from the Casey's General Store where she worked, but to no avail, and is now in the hot seat for that one.
Oh, I love a good, stupid criminal, right? All right, Pops, you got any winners and losers for this week?
You know, I'm going to have to agree with John. I think that the watch party was fantastic. We really enjoyed that. I was really enjoying. What a place too.
It was really fun. Of course, I know a lot of you are asking about when is the next watch party, and we have as many questions as you do because I still don't know.
Might want to direct that to the White House.
Yeah, if we are going to get a second debate. I do know the Democrat governors are there at the White House today, so whether or not they put the pressure on and just nominate Gavin from the White House today, I'm not sure. Certainly we'll have our eyes on that, and we will all be back together on Monday. I will say, coming from the debate, I named Trump a huge winner, and in fact, we are getting new internal polling this morning that shows Joe Biden losing in states like Virginia, New Hampshire, New Mexico. And I think it's really interesting because there's always been these like target swing states, and even those are showing it's not even close, John. I mean, the numbers are so crazy at this point. If you're Trump, how you plan for that, and if you're Democrats, how you come back from that. And it seems like they are circling the wagons and they want to keep Biden there. So I think that's the wrong move for them.
Yeah, for anything, if you're talking about them, they should be very grateful that the election isn't tomorrow.
They should be.
Amen.
They really should be. All right, other winners. I haven't seen it yet, Hannah. Inside Out 2 apparently is still dominating in the box offices. It is on my plan, but obviously we've got kind of a busy weekend. Hannah, do you got winners and losers?
My winner, surprisingly, Joe Biden. The spray tan he got this week was great. I know, Stephanie, you said he looked like an Oompa Loompa. I thought it looked much better than the ghostly white he was rocking at the debate the other night.
Have you seen they've also like photoshopped Trump's hair on him, and it looks
I didn't see that.
It looks way better actually.
I also have another winner of the week.
Okay.
Stephanie Bell.
Oh.
I know it's a little hard when Randy's out for a long time. He will be back on Monday, but I appreciate you sitting in the hot seat for several days in a row, and I know it's a lot on your schedule, so thank you.
Stepping up. Well, thank you, Hannah.
You did such a good job. We're going to let you take off tomorrow and Friday.
Oh, thanks, John.
Just for you.
Appreciate that. Too bad I have to work my other job. But no, we will be keeping an eye on the weather for you for tomorrow. It is not looking great, my friends. And again, I'm really disappointed. But I have sat through that Jefferson City parade when it was pouring buckets, and it was a memory that I won't soon forget. It was actually very fun. The candidates took it in stride. We had fun watching everyone. The candy, John, was a little soupy at the end.
What the heck?
but it was, we still got out and celebrated, and I hope that everyone listening gets out and celebrates too. Hannah, where will you be tomorrow morning?
Assuming it doesn't get rained out, California's parade is going to start at 10 a.m. So I will be in one of the big red fire trucks.
Ooh, be looking for Hannah. I will be at the Ashland parade, which starts at 9 a.m. there in Ashland early in the morning. And again, if you see me, I might have some wake up swag with me. So look for me. John, what are your big